Hey everyone, how you doing? It is August 11th, 8/11/2016, Thursday, and I'm out here again at the park, just charging up the computer, the laptop. They have outlets here, as you can see. There's an outlet right there, and I come here and charge up on my way to the library, and get a little work done, do some studying, and do some stuff. It's windy today, and they're doing some. They're taking the. So we have all these coconut trees here, right? Palm trees, and if you're not careful, the nuts will fall and crush your skull because they're really heavy and it's really far. So every once in a while, these people will come out and do some work. I'll show you what it looks like. So they have people who are specially trained and licensed to be able to go up into the tree and cut down the extra palm fronds and and knock down the coconuts. So before, when we were doing Tai Chi over there under the trees, we were all kind of like warily looking up, but now they got the coconuts out, so we're okay. We can do whatever we need to do. Pretty cool. Look, it looks like the sound is coming out of my ear, doesn't it? Music coming out of my ear. That's going to be the screen capture for this video, clearly. But today I was out here and I started learning some. I was debating between Korean and Indonesian to learn. But I feel like Indonesian might be more interesting just because, well, one, I don't know any Korean people on this island. So, and two, there is one Indonesian person on this island. She's the librarian. She's really nice. And I was telling her yesterday, I was asking, do you have any books in here in foreign languages? And she says, well, what language are you looking for? We don't really, just Hawaiian, but people here aren't really interested in reading books in other languages. What are you looking for? What language? And I said, oh, Bahasa Indonesia, because that's the Indonesian language. Bahasa means language, so Indonesian language. And she goes, oh, I speak Bahasa Indonesia. And I go, I know. That's why I'm not going to try any with you, because I don't know any yet. All I did yesterday, I bought this phrase book in Indonesian to learn a couple words, and I downloaded some flashcards on Memrise, which is an app for memory learning, on like spaced repetition learning on the phone. And then I downloaded, well, actually I already had some of the first Pimsleur Indonesian audio. Oh boy, it's really blowing here. Some of the first Pimsleur Indonesian. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to protect the mic, see if that helps. And so I started learning a little bit, and what happened? Whenever I start talking, it starts blowing really heavy. Hope you can hear me. So what I was going to talk about today was sort of my method of language acquisition, which isn't really the most. It's good for beginning learning a language, but it's not good for like advanced levels, because I never got to an advanced level, so I don't have a methodology for that. So this is how I initially start to learn a language when I'm really trying for it. And the thing is, a lot of people say, well, language learning is really hard, and that's true, but not for the reason most people think. Most people think it's hard because the grammar or the writing or tones or whatever else. Actually, that's the easy part, at least for me. The hard part for me is getting off my butt and studying and taking the time and energy to focus my brain. It's the hardest part is this thing, and just trying to get myself into that frame of mind of studying and being unafraid and just taking the time and energy to do it. That's the hard part for me. It's taxing on the brain. It's tiring. It's like a muscle you got to exercise. And so when you first work that muscle, it's challenging and hard, and it gets sore, and you just don't want to think about it. So for me, that's the hard part. But the actual structure of a language, grammar is grammar. There's rules and some usually exceptions to those rules, and that's okay. And from what I can tell from Indonesian, it's actually fairly grammatically easier language. It's one of the languages that were made more recently in human history. So that's an example. Afrikaans is an example of that. Hindi is the modern variant of Hindi is sort of an example. So there's these languages that were made more recently that sort of combine elements of different languages. And Bahasa Indonesia is one of them. And so the grammar is not too bad. Verb conjugations seem to be relatively easy so far. I mean, from one day of study, keep in mind, it's one day. But I've learned a few phrases, and like modifying adjectives, they're very easy. You don't have to do anything crazy with your adjectives to modify a noun, for example. Like saya is me, and buki, let's say the word book is book. I think it's similar, but book. It's to say my book, you just say book saya, right? Or I don't know, something saya is my something, right? Saya is me, that's mine. And it's the same word. You don't have to say me, my, you, your, none of that. So that's pretty cool. So when I first start learning a language, first thing I like to do is get down some initial introductory phrases about myself, because it's going to be the exact same 10 or 12 sentences you're going to say over and over to describe yourself, right? My name is Mark. I'm from America. I live in Hawaii. I'm a web designer. My wife's name is Ruhi. She's a filmmaker, an educator. I lived in China for 8 years. I play the guitar. I practice Chinese martial arts. I'm originally from Seattle. I lived in California for 10 years. The exact same phrases I say to anyone I meet for the first time, right? So it's all the same stuff. So when I was learning, I did a Spanish intensive course a couple years ago. That's the same stuff I learned. Hola, mi nombre es Marco Morandom. Soy del norte de México. Pero ahora vivo en la isla de Molokai in Hawaii. So my name is Mark, I'm an American, blah, blah, blah. All the same stuff. Practicar artes marciales de China. Practice Chinese martial arts. Perdón, pero mi español no es muy no bueno, porque actualmente no tengo mucho tiempo para estudiar español, porque mi trabajo es muy ocupado. So my Spanish is not so good right now. Perdón. In fact, it was never really that good. But I can say a couple phrases, right? Like, vamos a comer en el restaurante Colón. Let's go eat in the restaurant Columbus. Anyway, so that's the first thing I do, is I find those sentences. And what I'll do is I'll go on Fiverr, FIVERR.com, I think it's Fiverr, and I'll find a one of those $5 gigs that do translation, and I'll write my own self-introduction, like a paragraph or two, and I'll have someone translate that into a language, like Indonesian or Spanish. And then I'll also do a Fiverr to have someone say what is on that thing slowly into an audio file. And then I'll just play it to myself all day long, and I'll repeat after it and play it and repeat. After like a couple days of that, I actually can say that stuff pretty easily, because one, it's about myself, so it's easy to remember. So I can say self-introductory stuff usually within a week, no problem. At the same time, I'll use Pimsleur, which is pricey but really good for building an ear and building a tongue to say the sound. So they're really good at developing sound usage and developing something of an ear. So I'll do that to get a few phrases and stuff, and to get down. Oh, here comes the truck. Give me 1 second. Here, check it out. Looks like they're moving to a louder location. That's really loud. There they go. Get away. Okay, thank you. Actually, I'm glad they're here. It's good they're doing this. So I'll use Pimsleur to sort of build that up. Get a few phrases. Like I was doing the first Pimsleur for Indonesian today. I learned halo, salamat siang. It's like good morning-ish, good early afternoon. Saya tidak marangat bahasa Indonesia. Marangti bahasa Indonesia. Marangti bahasa Indonesia sedikit. So I can understand a little bahasa Indonesia, is what I can say. Or yeah. Saya orang Amerika. I think I'm an American. Anyway, so I'll do that to get like some initial stuff down. It's good for just general stuff like, do you understand English? Do I understand a little Indonesian? Stuff like that. So I'll do those at the same time. And I'll whenever I'm sitting around and I have some time to myself, I'll look on my phone. I'll have like the descriptive text in that language. Unfortunately, Indonesian is a phonetic alphabet in English letters, so it's really easy to read. It's almost the exact same alphabet as English. It's pretty cool. So I'll read the introductory text, which I need to come up with for Indonesian, and maybe I'll ask the lady at the library to help me with that. And then that's like the first week. That's week one, is get down those basics and essentials. I'll also start looking for like some good TV shows or on YouTube or Hulu or something, or a movie or something that I can get into, just to give myself, that's more for familiarity with the culture and the intonations and the way people say things. I don't do it to learn the language, more to learn the nuances of society, right? Because there's ways that you conduct yourself and the way you communicate in a language. And when you learn a language, this is something that Benny Lewis, who's a polyglot, talks about. I used to work for him, actually. And he talks about this sort of, you take on a persona for that language. And it's not that you're being fake, but you're building an identity in that culture. And so, music. And so you come up with a way of presenting yourself that makes sense in that language and that culture. You're not going to, like if you're kind of gregarious in American, you might be gregarious, but not the same way in like Japanese, for example, or Chinese. When I speak Japanese, I'm a little more subdued than when I speak English. そうですよね。I'm trying to think of something in Japanese now. My Japanese is, well, it's rusty these days. I haven't been practicing much Japanese. Sumimasen. If my mom's watching this, sumimasen, okasan. So, in Chinese I get some decent practice with just because of wushu and stuff. And when I go to Oahu or something, and there's a lot of Chinese people around everywhere you go, so it's easier to learn. And plus, Ruhi speaks Chinese, so sometimes I can speak to her a little bit here and there. But Chinese is easier to keep up with than Japanese because I don't know as many Japanese people, to be frank, or to be Mark. So that's the first week. After that, I'll start going into specific, little more ingrained topics. I'll continue with Pimsleur. I'll start probably by the end of the second week is when I'll find an online tutor through italki.com. And what I'll do is I'll try and force myself to only speak in that language. And this is where I take cues from Benny Lewis and some other polyglots, and they're all about speak first, don't worry about making mistakes. Mistakes are your friend, and that's how you learn. So what I'll do is I'll come up with some introduction stuff, and I'll try and have just a 2 to 5 minute conversation in that language only, using the words that I know with a native speaker. That's my like 2-week goal. End of the first week, middle of the second week, something like that. And I'll practice doing that so that I can just say a few words, you know, and then have a conversation, have them help me with my pronunciation, and then ask them some questions about like, what about this, what about that, and ask them for phrases that I would use in my daily life, or you know, things like that. So usually that's like a half an hour lesson tops, because I don't know enough Indonesian or the language for more than that usually at that point. But I'll continue on, usually by the end of the first month. And what I'll do is I'll have very specific vocabulary that I'm learning. I'll have a longer, usually after that first paragraph of introduction, I'll create a longer document to introduce myself, saying much more detail about my background, my family, those kinds of things. I'll also break down sort of the basics of the language, like the grammatical structure, like this is a ball, that is a pen, he is over there, I am over here, what is this, that, those, you know, that kind of stuff. Like the most common pronouns, the most common, like the helper verbs, like can something. So instead of saying like will, I will eat, I will something, will as a verb allows you to modify a lot of other verbs, so you don't have to modify that, like I ate, or I'm eating, or if there's a future tense for eat, instead of saying I future tense eat, you can say I will eat, or I want to eat, or I can something, or I need to something. So there's ways you can modify this core verb so that you don't have to know how to conjugate those verbs, which is kind of cool. So I'll focus on those. There's like 10 of those verbs that are good to learn. And then I'll start learning like the core, like 20 or so verbs you use all the time, like do, eat, sleep, drink, go, come, sit, stand, all that kind of stuff. The really basic action verbs that you need to know: read, listen, speak, understand, think, believe, you know, that kind of stuff. And then survival phrases like go to the bathroom, like where's the bathroom, where's the restaurants, and then direction stuff is good to know. So you kind of break it down into like sections. So For a few days, I'll focus on direction stuff. For a few days, I'll focus on food stuff. For a few days, I'll focus on maybe music vocab, stuff like that. So what you got to do is you got to chunk down the language into small pieces. If you try and tackle the whole language at once, it's overwhelming. So I'll say, okay, this week I just want to learn how to order simple things at a restaurant, like water and food, and ask for like 1 to 5 glasses of something, 1 to 5 plates of something, right? Super simple. And then the next week, maybe I'll say, okay, I want to be able to ask for and understand directions this week, so I'll just focus on that. The Innovative Language series, they do like IndonesianPod101.com or Mandarin Chinese 101.com. They do all these podcast series, but their products are really good and they're really specific to an environment or what you're doing. So that's really loud. So they're really good for that sort of thing. So going to the ATM, going to the bank, using a taxi, going to a restaurant, stuff like that. They're really good at helping you get key vocabulary for those specific things. So I use them for that. Sometimes I'll subscribe and download a bunch of stuff and then I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll keep my subscription for a while. It depends on my commitment to that language, to be honest. So that's what I'll do. That's usually my first month to 3 months of study, is just focusing on the basics to get to the point where I can start to have a survival level conversation with someone. Like in Spanish, I could probably do survival level Spanish. I can't have a real conversation, but I can, if you plop me down in the middle of Spain, I could probably find my way around. Whereas in Chinese, I could actually have a conversation about something I think about or an idea. Nothing too complex. I can't discuss philosophy or anything, but I can talk about just general stuff, right? Like, oh yeah, yesterday I ate such and such. It was really good. Her mom makes that. It's really delicious. And oh hey, where are you going tomorrow? Blah blah blah. Stuff like that. General, casual conversation stuff. I can do that in Chinese and Japanese pretty well, but I can't talk deeply about anything. But yeah, so that's initially my approach to language learning and how I try to learn a language, and what I'm going to try to do with Indonesian if I can get my brain around the fact that I'm going to do this. Again, the hardest part of learning the language is committing to learning a language, to be honest. Beyond that, it's all gravy because you're committed, so you just put in the time and effort you need. Well, now it looks like music's coming out of both of my ears. That's pretty cool. So that's it for today. If you're learning a language, that's cool. Good luck to you. If you know Indonesian, actually one person watching this might know Indonesian. So Hafiz, if you're watching this, selamat siang. Apa kabar? And I hope everyone's doing really well. Be good to each other, be happy, be thankful, have some gratitude, because the world is good. Even though crazy things happening, a lot of good stuff happening too, so focus on that. And that's it for today. Take care of yourselves and keep on keeping on.